So much. First, really let me thank the Hindu College from Delhi that has sponsored this program. And also let me thank Benedict and Ricardo, who have been the coordinators of this program. It has been absolutely fantastic. And to meet such incredible scholars that have come from everywhere has delighted me completely. Clara, Swami Medhanand, I've just enjoyed all the talks, Professor Panda and his student, Mr. Pandey. And so just everybody that I've met, and I have met also, I'm forgetting your full name. I'm remembering your spiritual name. So who is here representing the Gaudiya tradition. And also Herbert, Alan Herbert, who has been, oh, can you not hear? I'll hold it then. Yes, and also, and how about now? Is it okay? Okay, yeah, it has to go really close. Got it. Okay, we'll just hold it in hand then. Yes. So how is that? That's good?
Yes.
Okay, so just really a joy to meet everybody and be here and to share together. And for myself, when I had just published my book not long ago, and I've been thinking about this topic actually, and then I came across it from that this conference was taking place, and so it was a question that I was actually contemplating for myself about God in the Indian tradition and light of Advaita Vedanta. And so, and yes, I must say to begin with that I know that often in Sanskrit we pronounce the a like ananda, but I have also learned that it's pronounced as well as anand. And so if I'm forgetting the please excuse me. But in North India, which is where I reside primarily, we say shabd, we say anand. We don't add the because then it would be as if a bardiya ki matra at the end of the word, which it is not. So, I like to respect everybody. So please excuse me if I've overstepped my bounds. And so, yes, so I was very interested on God and that which is Advaita Vedanta, which is not theistic. And so that is my inspiration for this conference. And so let's try this one. Okay, how's that? Is that better?
Yes.
All right. So my topic is actually on the question of Advaita Vedanta and theism. Regarding the question of God, theism, and consciousness, in the Indian tradition, this paper proposes to highlight the unique perspective of Advaita Vedanta and its view of consciousness, as well as how the questions of God and consciousness factor into the philosophical system of non-dualism. This will then be analyzed against the backdrop of theism. The texts used to develop this discussion will be the Upanishads, primarily the two oldest Upanishads, the Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya Upanishad. From the viewpoint of Advaita Vedanta, these Upanishads define consciousness as Brahman, the unchangeable and indestructible reality, or Akshar Brahman. This unprecedented perspective on consciousness from the stance of non-dualism explains that not only is Brahman both the underlying and ultimate reality, but a human being can realize it. The actualization of this truth is not based on faith, but on direct realization or sakshatkar. Once reached, it is referred to as moksha, liberation, self-realization, whereby the aspirant is liberated from the world of illusion or samsara. The one who attains this state is not said to become God or the supreme being, but simply the one who has realized the truth of the indivisible reality. Can Brahman as the indestructible, unchanging reality be discussed alongside the principles of theism, whether pantheism, panentheism, henotheism, or monotheism, etc.? Can theism explain and accommodate the concept of self-realization or moksha? And can there be an understanding of the enlightened consciousness in theism or theistic religions in which God is presented as the supreme being and the worshipper as separate from the object of worship? In a discussion about being and non-being, Sat and Asat, the Rishi or sage of the Chandogya Upanishad 621 asserts Ekam Eva Advitiyam, one without a second, meaning that being or Brahman is without another. No second, Vidya exists. The Brihat Aranyak Upanishad declares in one of its most quoted Mahavakyas, or great utterances, Aham Brahmasmi, or I am Brahman. Here again, reinforcing the singularity of Brahman in the context of it being without a second. In Advaita, these utterances explained by the sages or rishis affirm the truth that Brahman is one aham, one I, one pervasive consciousness. The question that follows next is if the sages who have revealed this truth are other than the indivisible Brahman due to their human condition, does it not stand to reason that since the human mechanism is prone to change and destruction, and prone to lower and higher knowledge, apara and paravidya, that it is other than the indivisible Brahman? The Upanishads posit that according to the reality of Brahman as Ekam, the one who realizes the truth of oneness is not separate from that truth itself. The non-dual is devoid of distinctions, devoid of human or divine elements or tattvas, because it alone is. The non-dual is the reality of perfection. In support of this verity, the Upanishadic sages articulated the mantra of perfection, which came to be known as one of the 5 Shanti mantras preceding the recitation of the Upanishads. This mantra stems from the Brihat Aranyak Upanishad. Purnam Madaha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adai Purnam Eva Avashishyate. That self is whole, this entire manifestation is whole, and whatever is removed from the whole remains whole. The Indian tradition, as observed from religious, philosophical, and sociological studies, incorporates theism as well as a type of monotheism, however, and generally speaking, not in the manner of the exclusive monotheism of the Judeo-Christian traditions, and in this regard, it more closely falls under the category of pantheism or henotheism. Its religious traditions thereby include priests, known as pundits, in a host of various roles, but the priest or pundit is not representative of the liberated consciousness or Jivan Mukta, as depicted in the Upanishadic philosophical thought of non-dualism. The self-realized soul, the Jivan Mukta, is neither priest nor God. It is this actualization of the state of consciousness of non-dualism that defines the notion of Brahman consciousness and differentiates it from theism in general, whether Indian or otherwise. Monotheism, on the other hand, exacts the existence of one God, only one God, who is the creator and who, as the creator, is the source of all existence, from sentient to insentient being, from the earth to the heavens, to even the existence of infinite unknown universes. This one God is described as almighty, all-seeing, all-pervading. But the one who worships God, though created by God, is according to monotheism, not God, even if made in God's own image. Genesis 1:27. This, therefore, is the significant point that distinguishes this discussion between non-dualism and theism, and in this instance, monotheism as well. In India, the general knowledge of Brahman or Atman as the essential reality has in many instances resulted in pantheism and or henotheism above other theisms. By this is meant that the Indian psyche is familiar and comfortable with the notion that God is all, and from God all has emerged, therefore acknowledging that all is imbued with God. This is the general interpretation of one of the four central Mahavakyas, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahm, or all is undoubtedly Kalu, definition of Kalu, Brahm. In the context of Advaita Vedanta, there is no second and thereby no all. But in general Hinduism, this declaration is understood more along the lines of pantheism. Brahman is perceived as a divine force from which all ensued, and all is imbued with Brahman. This understanding has theistic undertones. On the topic of gods and deities in this ancient civilization, the primary gods such as Krishna, Ram, Shiv, or the Devi or goddess in the form of Kali, Durga, Sita, Radha, Saraswati, or Lakshmi, they exist side by side. The prevalence of so many gods may draw the label of polytheism, yet on closer examination and studying the Vaishnavite sects, where the devotees appear to be exclusively devoted to their chosen deity of Vishnu in the form of Krishna or Ram, one may discover when questioning these devotees that faith in their chosen deity is not based upon the exclusion of the existence of another deity or deities. For example, a Vaishnavite may choose to worship Vishnu in the form of Krishna or in the form of Ram. Whilst choosing to worship Vishnu, the devotee may not necessarily deny the presence of Shiv or simultaneously worship Shiv in adoration. This would fall under the category of pantheism. The worship of a particular deity gave rise to the concept of the Ishtadevata, or the chosen personal or family deity, whilst acknowledging the presence of other deities. This may be interpreted as being in accordance with henotheism. Just before coming to this conference, I ended up being in situations with local people, and so the points that I'm making here were brought to me. Of course, vanity is one of the things that the last to leave us. So I had gone to the hairdresser with the thought of coming to the conference. And there I was speaking with the hairdresser. And so we were speaking about the deities, and it had happened to be Ram Navami that day, which is the birth of Ram, and a big celebration in India. And so we were speaking, and he was telling me that his Ishtadevata is Lord Shiv, but he was going to the temple to celebrate the birth of Ram. And so we were discussing just how these points that I was making, and had been my experience of speaking with so many people in India, that this is so charming about this country. I love Bharat. I have lived here for many years and studied here. And the sense of inclusion, the sense of someone's belief, does not interfere with other human beings, but rather embraces and includes the beings. This is what is so significant to this country, and it is a quality that must spread worldwide, because we see time and again where the conflict arises due to conflict disease. So I just really enjoyed writing this and then meeting. I spoke with a rickshaw driver, I spoke with the hairdresser, with the shopkeeper, and they were all just sharing from their side without my questioning them deeply. But that is why I'm very inspired by this topic. So I'll continue. And I believe that actually this sense of inclusion that permeates the whole of the consciousness in India stems from non-dualism. Because when one reaches that space where one is just absorbed in the potency of consciousness, but without qualification, then oneness can be spread, can be felt, can be known, and can be lived in unity. So I'll continue. Non-dualism, in contrast, does not acknowledge the presence of a creator or non-creator. It is the eternal, unchanging, and indestructible state of Brahman. It includes no higher or lower dimension, no above or beyond, because it's ot and prot, or ota and prota, or warp and weft, if indeed it consists of that, is Brahman. This is articulated by Yajnavalkya in the Brihad Aranyak Upanishad in chapter 3, while dialoguing with Gargi Vachak Navi in the Yajnavalkya Khandam, where he is questioned by 8 pundits in King Janak's court. Here in 361, the 6th and only female questioner, Gargi, is interested in knowing the ota and prota, or warp and weft, of the different elements. She inquires that since all is woven by water, what in turn is water woven from? Yajnavalkya answers that its warp and weft is air. Next, she asks about the ot and prot of air, to which he replies that it is the sky. In this repetitive manner of question and answer, Yajnavalkya elaborates that the ot and prot of the sky is the world of the Gandharvas, and of the world of the Gandharvas is the world of the sun, and theirs is the world of the moon, and theirs is the world of the stars, and theirs is the world of the gods, and of these is the world of Indra, and of these is the world of Prajapati, and of these is the world of Brahma. When Gargi questions what the worlds of Brahma are woven from, Yajnavalkya warns her to stop probing, otherwise her head will fall off. He explains that one should not inquire about a subject to which there are no answers. At this juncture, the great Upanishadic sage is indirectly teaching that the ineffable Brahman and indefinable Brahman cannot be grasped by the intellect, because direct experience of the self is beyond the reach of the human intellect and must therefore be realized. By responding to Gargi with the warning to question sincerely, lest her head fall off, Yajnavalkya is also indicating that the knowledge of the self must be prepared for. It cannot be transmitted simply because one is curious. This definitely introduces the notion of practice, because it is during the process of sadhana that the intellect is purified, developed, and expanded to comprehend the self. But the intellect itself is not the vehicle that realizes the self. Self alone recognizes the self. However, for this to be actualized, the Upanishads are rife with the techniques of dhyan or meditation. In what has come to be known as the classic instruction, as enunciated by the sage Yajnavalkya, is Shravan, Manan, and Nididhyasan, hearing the truth, reflecting upon it, and Nididhyasan, meditating on it. For a human being to eradicate the divisive consciousness, meditation on the indivisible is advised. The application of mantra during the practice of dhyan was the innovation of the Upanishadic gurus, The recitation of the lengthy hymns in the elaborate Vedic yagyas was condensed into the repetition of one sound, the prana or om. This seemingly simple sound was endowed with transformative spiritual power, whose vibrations unfolded self-knowledge. The word mantra, many know, breaks down into the root word mind, thinking vehicle, and the suffix tra, or release from the mind. Thus, through the agency of mantra, the practitioner was able to release the mind from any sort of vibration, projection, reflection, any movement, gross or subtle, and lead one into the subtlest perception of the self. The mastery of meditation and the realization of immortality resulted in the annihilation of fear, a recurring theme throughout the Upanishads, of which the Chandogya Upanishad says the following. The syllable Om is the immortal Amritam, the fearless Abhayam. Entering it, the gods become immortal and fearless. The knowing one, who like the gods repeats and extols the Om by way of meditation, enters it and becomes immortal like the gods. The Upanishadic gurus explain the practice of meditation through metaphor. One of the most famous of these is that of the bow and arrow, described in the Mundaka Upanishad, a treatise delineating the steps of yoga. It declares that the Om, as the mighty weapon of the Upanishads, should be utilized as the bow, and that the soul or Jivatman, which has been sharpened through the practice of meditation, should be fitted like an arrow into the bow. Then, with acute mental power honed through meditation, one should stretch the bow, and that is, repeat the mantra one-pointedly, directing one's attention to Brahman, and hit the target of the imperishable, non-dual Brahman. The Tana Bindu Upanishad says, use the Om as the bow and the soul as the arrow to hit precisely the goal of Brahman by uninterruptedly identifying with Brahman. The ultimate goal of meditation is liberation, and it must be performed no matter how trying a practice it may be. The Shishya unfolds the liberated state by continuously making efforts and enduring the unforeseen troubles such as discouragement, laziness, doubt, faithlessness, which may arise in the course of the practice. The Teja Bindu speaks of this in its second verse. This supreme meditation is difficult to establish, difficult to perceive, difficult to maintain. It is difficult to execute, even for the sages, those who are wise, the Muni and the Manishin. But tenacity of practice ultimately leads to success. Because the knowledge of the self, or Brahm Vidya, is potent, and its realization is transformative in that the individual human consciousness must be purified from its inherent sense of duality to perceive, to realize the reality of the self. If one is unprepared for the purification of duality into oneness, then the dissolution of one's sense of individuality can be earth-shattering. And this is what is happening between Yajnavalkya and Gargi. He says, which then leads the inquirer to feel as if their head is falling off. That is why the Upanishads insist that unless one is a genuine jigyasu or inquirer into self-knowledge and an adhikaran, or one who merits self-knowledge, then Brahm Vidya is not to be imparted to such a questioner. At the conclusion of her first dialogue with Yajnavalkya, Gargi respectfully heeds the great sage's admonition, demonstrating that she is a true inquirer, and allows one of the other pundits to ask a question. Following Udalakaruni's interaction, Gargi once again approaches Yajnavalkya, yet this time with greater reverence. Her first question continues from her last session about the warmth and weft of the universe. Now she asks about the warmth and weft of that which is above the heavens, below the earth, and in between heaven and earth, which people refer to as the past, present, and future. Yajnavalkya answers that space, or Akash, is woven across it all. Praising him for illuminating her through his answer to this difficult question, she then asks about the warp and weft of space, or Akash. Gargi speaks Yajnavalkya. Those knowledgeable ones who know Brahman as indestructible, Aksharam, say that it is not gross or subtle, short or long, red like fire or cohesive. It is without shadow or darkness, without air or ether. It is unattached, without taste, smell, eyes, ears, voice, mind, energy, and life force. It is without a mouth, without measure. It is infinite, without an interior or exterior. It does not eat, nor is it eaten. Gargi, this indestructible reality, though unseen, is the seer. Though unheard, is the hearer. Though unthought, is the thinker. Though unknown, is the knower. No other seer than this, no other hearer than this, no other thinker than this, no other knower than this exists. Gargi, this indestructible reality is the warp and weft of space, the quintessential knowledge, the non-dual of the self that Yajnavalkya delivers to this female pundit, distinguishes him throughout the ages. He has led the attention from the elements or tattvas to that Brahman which cannot be seen, but is the seer, cannot be heard, but is the hearer, that Brahman, which is the indestructible, non-dual Akshara. From this unique articulation in the Upanishads, of which many statements are proclaimed, the Indian philosophical system of Advaita Vedanta was developed, and it is particularly attributed to Sri Shankara, who executed its quintessential knowledge and promoted the spiritual path that emphasized a practice whereby aspirants could realize the Upanishadic truth of non-dualism. And I would like to, that's the end of this, but I would like to do one more thing, and that is take a minute and have us meditate just for 2 minutes.
Sure.
Thanks. So the essence of the talk of non-dualism, of course, incorporates the practice of meditation. And what I have loved being here and speaking to so many different people is coming to know that each has a very different practice or mantra, but at the same time we are united, and meditation is not a religion. Meditation is not a dogma. It is that which actually unfolds that consciousness of the non-dual. So the one quality when we close our eyes, which is the same for all, we close our eyes, what do we see? We see that which is space, blue-black space, white space, whatever the inner eyes see. Whether for some it has a color, for some it has no color. But that space has no form, that Akash, which Yajnavalkya was explaining to Gargi. That Akash has no form. It has no name. It is pure. It is eternal. And it is the essence from which the whole universe manifests, all knowledge manifests. One can call it pure consciousness, Satchit Anand, eternal existence, pure consciousness, pure bliss. So I thought we can take a moment in being with that space, knowing it as the true nature, the undivided reality. And those who are initiated into a practice can repeat their mantra or not, whether it is Ram mantra, Krishna mantra, the Lord's Prayer, any mantra one can repeat because that engages the mind, which is full of thoughts, beautiful thoughts, not beautiful thoughts. That it engages the mind and allows the power of the space to unfold. And from that unfoldment of space, pure akash, pure consciousness, intelligence sprouts, bliss sprouts, the state of undivided consciousness sprouts. So let us take a moment in that. You can return to the waking state, return to this field, having tapped into that stillness, the silence, which in itself is like a fantastic bath for the mind. Thank you so much.